completely impromptu dev stream today. Thanks for dropping in. If you've popped in late. I didn't know if I was going to get back online today because I've been tidying up the room behind me. But I've got an hour or two free now. So I figured time to work on the game for a little bit, and I may as well do that in public. I'm just going to pop a little message on Blue Sky, which I signed out of apparently. But yeah, I'm just going to show you where we've got to with the game in the last week or so. There's been lots of little changes in line with pivoting the thing to being well, more Golem Gourmet themed and less random dark fantasy. I mean, it's still got all of the dark fantasy, and it's just more in the service of adding texture to this kind of crazy fantasy cooking platformer stuff. So what I'm going to be doing today is going through a bunch of the rooms that I've already created and just sort of like redoing some of them to work with a new system that we've got, and I will take you through the system. Just going to drop a little. I refuse to call them skeet. I think we should call them bleat because it's more like a tweet, because it's just what a sheep says instead. Going live for an hour or so to discuss level design and do some tweaks. That'll be fine. But yeah, I got a where is it? Big old spreadsheet together to just sort of work out the final kind of content scope of the game. So this is just a big backlog of bugs and ideas. This is the sort of intentional deck for the deck building part of the game in terms of all the little bits of level that the player is going to get to play around with. Who's that? Has just popped into the chat. Hey, Paul. Hey, Felipe. Or Philippe. Nice to see you both. You sound underwater. Ah, hang on. Let me just...
Sorry about that. It was taking the webcam mic. Why does it keep doing that? Thank you, Endo. Appreciate it. Let me just see what's going on over there. There we go. Yeah, I changed that earlier. I don't know why it didn't fix. Maybe it's separate on each of my streaming pages. I don't know. But yeah, I planned out a load of stuff to just sort of work out what the final content of the game needs to be. So the idea at the moment is the player will start with a deck of simple grey rooms. Throughout their run, they will draft the blue and green rooms. And then the red rooms now, rather than starting in your deck, they are something that you spawn in a different way, which I think is really... I know I've posted about this online, but I don't think I showed it in the stream. We've got this door monster. So people that saw my horrible giant mouth monster before in the game. We've got a rebuild of that now. But it's a small door and you feed it. And then when you fed it enough, it spawns a big scary red room. And that's so much better because it turns the red rooms into our kind of... like the Hades challenge rooms, where they're sort of an optional additional part of the game. And that means that new players can completely ignore them. So players that just want to play it as like a chill, cute experience can mostly ignore the scary stuff at least for the first hour, half an hour, until they're like properly onboarded, and then they can start engaging with that thing, because it really requires you to do like a micro challenge to even see the red room content, which is the kind of more scary, difficult stuff. This is all a mess at the moment. Sorry, I've broken the menu. I'm just going to turn the music off because I've got ambient music playing. So we've got a library. This is an example of one of the blue rooms. These are themed as being the palace. So the grey rooms you start off with, their kind of theme, suit name is ruins. Grey ruins, blue palace, green gardens, and then red badlands. And there's some other stuff as well, but those are the primary ones. You're mainly drafting green rooms to get ingredients and blue rooms to get other types of resources. So most of the diners that you meet that you need to serve food to, like these guys down here, mostly they're going to appear in the blue palace rooms that you draft, like on a balcony and stuff like that. And then depending on what they order, you're going to need to draft different rooms, because one of them's going to want something with cheese in it. So it's like, okay, I need to draft the dairy so I can collect cheese, that kind of stuff. So we're trying to kind of create a push and pull between, you know, what you're trying to do strategically and like the next couple of rooms that you draft, I guess, each time. I'm trying to make sure that the run feels substantially different each time. So at the moment, I'm making new rooms and I'm just sticking them all in the deck, but you wouldn't start off the game with these blue palace rooms in your deck. They're like a additional thing. And when you're first playing the game, you're going to be using the grey deck, getting a couple of blue and green rooms and gradually learning what the blue and green rooms do. And then as you advance through the metagame, you will start the levels off with more keys, and that will give you more opportunity to like draft more during your run. So we don't actually have the mechanism yet for picking a new room, but the way it will work is when you find one of these bookcases, you give it a little whack. It's supposed to drop a card, but instead it's destroyed the tile underneath. I know why that's happening, but I'm not going to fix it now. That would give you a card, pick one of three, and it's going to be like, you know, 50% chance it's another grey room, 25% chance it's a blue room or a green room. And then I've done a bunch of slight kind of art tweaks so that the green and blue rooms have their own identity. And, you know, this is a stone block. It's basically the same thing, but if it spawns in a green room, it's got moss all over it. And if it spawns in a blue room, it's kind of neater and tidier. And then this is the new door. It can't hurt you. It doesn't actually like bite you or anything like the old big one did. It is, but it has a few different behaviors. You go up to it and it pops out. It's normally just hidden in the door frame like that. And the further away from it, the slower it animates. It kind of looks like it's trying to hide, and then you get up close and it gets excitable and pops out and goes, hello. It's very kind of Rocky Horror Picture Show, very Little Shop of Horrors. You feed that. And if you feed it small bits of food, like raw ingredients, it will take 3. But if I feed it one of these, this is like a finished meal. So this will fill it up in 1. I'm going to tweak it later. I think I might make it so it biases towards meat. But feed that guy. He's going to go for a bit. But slightly too long, actually. And then he's going to spawn a red room like that. And then that's how you get the red rooms. So we might have it so that later on in the game you can draft red rooms as well and deliberately put them in your deck. Oh, thanks, Kadir Samir. Sorry, I can't pronounce your screen name, but I appreciate that. But yeah, the red rooms are always designed to be like the scary rooms that you mostly didn't want to draft, but there wasn't really a reason to actively draft them when you had the choice to. So taking them out of the deck and making them so they spawn from these doors is quite nice, because sometimes the door is going to dead end you because you've opened all the other doors in the level and the only one left is this one. It also creates more uses for all the food items in the level, right? Because there's going to be quite a lot of food items in the level. Some of them you're going to use for cooking and giving to the customers, but the more things in the game that I can give that you need to feed something to, the better, because it creates this kind of constant, like, it's a spatial economy of like, there's all of these objects, I need to sort of work out where they'll spawn and carry them around from place to place and all of that kind of stuff. And I really, really like the red door because it kind of plays with that quite a bit. And now we've got the next room open and I can go down there. These doors are new as well. I've done a bunch of new art. All of these bricks, so these are like the normal grey bricks from the main rooms, but because they've spawned in a red room, they've got little bits of fungus on them. So I've done a bunch of little art things like that. And then if I spawn the foyer, there's a little bit of creep that happens with the fungus. In a moment, you'll probably see some of this fungus start to creep across onto the blue blocks as well. There you go. There's just a couple of little touches like that I've done in the last couple of days. Yeah, I've got a bunch of the rooms have a bug now where characters will spawn on the wrong layer, but I know how to fix that now, so I'll be doing that as I go along. And then I've been designing these backgrounds for the blue rooms, so I've been sort of putting in elements that look like something from like a fancy French or Italian restaurant, like these windows with the window boxes, and then also these kind of dangling banners. So I'm trying to make the blue palace room sort of feel exactly in the middle of a medieval fantasy castle and a fancy restaurant. So that as you build your level, those are the bits that feel like a restaurant, and then the green bits are like outdoor gardens. Oh. The music is not, that piece of music is not obeying the music volume slider. That's funny. Fix that another time. The teeth door should make a stomach rumbling sound too, yeah. It's the sort of thing that when I add a new feature like that, I do as much as I can with the sound effects that are already in the project, and then I'll probably come back later and add some more. But yeah, I'm pretty pleased with the kind of slightly different visual identity of each of the room types now. And I always wanted it to be a bit of a weird kind of science fantasy mix of sort of fantasy fairy tale stuff and post-apocalyptic stuff, kind of like you have in Adventure Time. And now we can kind of do that in a flipped way. So I think the grey rooms that you start off within your deck will have this industrial stuff on, like these pipes. They're kind of, yeah, fantasy punk. That's kind of the vibe. And then yeah, the start game, you're going to have more of those grey rooms, and it's going to feel more like you're setting up a shabby little you're cooking food in this kind of gross environment. I also want to pivot to having a bunch of the starting kind of creatures that you bash be just like rats and cockroaches and stuff you would want to clean up as vermin in an eatery. And a lot of them won't even necessarily attack you, they'll just eat your food, which is I want a lot of the hazards in this game to be quite indirect and not necessarily about taking your health away, more about like damaging some other goal that you have or breaking the level in some way. Hey Curious Dynamics. Yeah, I'm in a good place with the project at the moment, though. One of the reasons I know that is because I've got loads of, like, editing to do on podcasts and everything, and I'm having to, like... I want to work on the game. I know I need to get the editing done, so I'm having to do things like forcing myself to do 20 minutes of editing before I can work on the game and stuff like that, so... There's a lot to do, and a lot of it's quite fun stuff. So yeah, this room here, this is the style that the starting deck will be. This kind of dirty industrial, probably going to change the background art a little bit. But generally speaking, this is how the starting deck will be built. I'm not going to have quite as many traps and stuff in it because I don't want new players to get... I don't want this to be Spelunky levels of difficult or Noita levels of difficult when it starts off. I want it to build up to that, you know? You play for a few hours, you get better at building the deck, then you're putting kind of more complex rooms in your deck and opening more of those red doors and stuff, and that's when the challenge starts to creep in and the game starts killing you a bit more. But mostly, I want it to be quite a chill experience where it's all about like just trying to pick up as much treasure as you can on a run, and then when you do mess up, it's usually because you've built the thing so big and you can't get back to the start or whatever, because you do have to get back to the ship to end the run. So trash bag. Another thing I do need to do is put a little highlight on objects you can pick up, because stuff like that trash bag is very hard to see. And I can fix the sprite to make it more visible, but I do think I've noticed there is a just general UX problem of like when there's a couple of objects close to each other, you do need the highlight. So I'll be working out how to do that soon as well. This has got really, really fungused up over here. Maybe there could be a way to clean it off. You sort of bash it. Bash the fungus blocks and it comes back off again, or carry some sort of bubbling thing over and get rid of it. There's quite a lot of safeguards in place to make sure you can get back to the ship. But yeah, you can like end your run. And the deeper you get into the game as well, there'll be some metagame upgrades that stop you losing all of your gold on ending the run as well. But we might soften some of that. I've already softened the full damage so that you can't immediately die from full damage unless you're only at 1 health. The boots of tax evasion are like the most contrived object. Right, so some of these rooms are more like a traditional castle. So these ones I'm going to convert into blue rooms, I think. So these will be in the fancy deck. And they're blue because they'll be utility rooms, whereas green are more ingredients rooms, I think. That needs to go in. Annoying thing with Game Maker is I put all of this color coding in my project thing and then it goes away. It forgets it because it's not saved as part of the project. It's saved as like the individual user preferences on the project. Make that a purpley color. So put these in a new group. I started doing a bunch of organizing of this, but I haven't quite finished it yet. The foyer and the library are blue rooms. They need to move up here. There they are. You can see all the bookcases and stuff there. I'm not quite sure why the bookcases are deleting the block underneath them when they go up in the air after being hit, but I don't really want to do debugging right now. I need to focus on what I need to focus on. So you look at my list of rooms. And I sort of went through this on my phone last night as well. I'm just going to compare what this is to what I had in my head. Sometimes if you do the same bit of concepting work in 2 places, you can sort of see what was common. And the thing is, I want the starting deck to start off a little bit boring, right? Because if it's too varied, it's going to be overwhelming, and also you lose the benefit of upgrading it. So I was thinking of having something called a campsite, which is how you get diners at the start. Mute. Warehouse that gives you some, like, gives you some items, but you don't get much choice over what they are, so it's not easily controlled. Then I was going to have some deliberately useless rooms in the starting deck where one of your metagame upgrades is removing them. So just something really pointless like a bridge or a corridor or something. We're going to have something called a study, which will be like for drafting new rooms, and that will be how you draft the rest of the deck. Although I'm not sure how that fits in with the kind of industrial theming of it. What are they called here? And then the library is like an upgraded version of the study. So you get the study in the starting deck, use it to draft a library. Now you've got the blue library room. Now you can draft like 3 new rooms from that one or something. Whereas the starting study might only give you 1 or 2. And we're going to have something called... we kind of want to have some sort of... a room that gives you a relic, but it shouldn't just be obviously there. Or maybe it's like a pick one of 2. I think the thing I'm struggling with is, like, I know what I want the functions of these rooms to be, but I also want them to feel like they make thematic sense at the same time. Well, let's just make the first 3 anyway. We'll make the campsite, the warehouse, and the study. So I'm going to find what I have that I can use as a template. And then once we get making, I can show you how the new system works for building rooms, because it's kind of neat. Okay, I'm gonna duplicate the carnival for now. And we'll move this up into the grey section because it's going to be a starter room. Okay. And then... I'm just going to get rid of some of these things that were in the room that I copied. We don't want the balloons, we don't want the gifts. I mean, the thing about spreadsheets like that is they're not worth doing until you know why you're doing them, and then they sort of make themselves a little bit. You know, it's kind of like... It's a way of just putting ideas out and systematizing something. But whether or not it's useful is going to really, really depend on a bunch of different stuff. I'm not a fan of doing any sort of documentation or spreadsheets until I know that I need to. Okay, we're going to get rid of all of the stuff we don't need. And then... get rid of all of that. So this is the room boundary that is used to basically detect when the player's in the room, and also when the room is built, if it's built over other rooms, this is what's used to like destroy the stuff underneath. Which I think when some people see it for the first time, they're like, why does it do that? But when you've played with it for a little while, you kind of realize there's a strategic reason why you want to do that, and it becomes kind of part of the fun. Hey, Eric. Okay, instance layer. This is going to be spawn chance 100 camp. So this is the new system that we've been using where Gleb's room loader library is gonna has been sort of slightly modified so that we can have a sort of a syntax, I guess, of like how we name layers on here to spawn certain things and not other things. And I'm not doing anything interesting with it right now. I will show you how it works in a second once we go to doing something more interesting with it. So this is the intention of this room, the campsite, is to have a basic room in the starting deck where players can always get a diner, because the diners are like your quests, right? The diners just show up and go, I want a carrot, or I want some pasta. So you need to have diners. So this is going to be the basic way of getting diners. Now I'm going to make a layer to put the guaranteed diner in. So we're going to have spawn amount 1 diner. So all of the diners I placed down in this layer, I wish there was a way of making the grid default to the right size for the project, but it changes every layer. So these are the diners, right? That's what they look like. That's set to 12 instead of 24. That's the placeholder. That's just like one of the diner sprites that can be picked, but they will all look like that when I place them in the level. And I can go, okay, 3 there, 3 there. And what the layer name now means is it's gonna, the diner bit at the end doesn't matter. That's just for my own legibility. The spawn amount 1 is going to take all of these instances I placed in the level and just pick one of them and only spawn one of them, right? So what, but and then I can also do these spawn chance ones, which basically picks, if I duplicate that whole layer actually, and this one will be spawn chance 25 diner. Right, so if I just hide that layer, so on the guaranteed diner layer that is only spawning 1, it's going to spawn either of these guys, right? And then the other layer is going to spawn any of these 4, but they will have a percentage chance to spawn based on this number. So if I do 25, it's nearly always going to spawn at least one of them. It might spawn more of them because they all independently have a 1 in 4 chance of spawning. So we're going to try that. And then the game will automatically set the diner to be like the correct one for how far we are in the game. So we have a progression currency, which is currently just stars, because that's what people are familiar with from things like Diner Dash and stuff like that. So the more stars you have, the later in the game understands you being, and then it will pick more difficult food for you to find and serve. And then it picks the food first, and then it picks the diner to match the food. So if it's picked a cheese-based thing, it will then pick a rat. If it's picked a barrel of toxic waste, it will pick the Godzilla character who wants to eat some toxic waste. It kind of happens backwards, because the food is the thing that sets the difficulty of the challenge, if that makes sense. I've got these bits of flowers which are kind of floating in the air here. I'm just going to move them into the right places. And those fireflies are also on this layer as well, which is quite nice. So these are just like our kind of clutter objects. But what I'm going to do, because now we've got the new system, is I'm going to pop these in more places. And then this layer will become spawn amount 7 clutter, and it's just going to pick 7 of the objects in that list, get rid of everything else. We could have a very small chance to find crates and useful thing here. I guess because it's supposed to be a campsite, I should really put the diners around the fire. So let's do that as well. So these are our guaranteed ones. Okay, and then our bonus diners will appear behind. Very weird outdoor restaurant vibes here. And then I'm gonna put some more of these in. I just want to see how high up the door should be if we were to put another door above. Because the thing I can do now is, well, have a chance to spawn a door, which I couldn't do before. It was like, if there's a door there, it's always there. So that's kind of an interesting prospect now. But yeah, we can have a couple of extra bits of kind of ruin, I guess. Maybe either side so it feels sheltered. And what we'll do, we're not quite doing kind of spelunky levels of prop gen here. But we can have this other layer. Oh, I just accidentally copied the whole layer then. Okay. We have this other layer with some additional blocks in, which sometimes spawn and sometimes don't. So on top of these other blocks. It's not really going to add any kind of difficulty or anything to the room, but it is going to mean that if we spawn multiple of these in a row, they should feel and look and feel a little bit different from each other. And I can take some blocks from the main layer and put them here as well, so they're a little bit more optional. Okay, and then this is something that I've been needing to refactor. I'm going to make a new group called container items, because I've got a whole set of items like jars, crates, things that you can break that have different sorts of things in. But I've got all of these different sprites for producing like types of crate where you know what's going to be in them. So there's a grocer crate that always has fruit or vegetables in. There's a dairy crate that has milk or eggs in, and in each crate has like a concept of what's a rare thing. So like a piece of cheese is rarer than a milk, because the milk you normally have to make into cheese. So if you get a cheese, you're kind of getting a shortcut by not having to do that extra step of processing. So I have all of these different types of thing that can spawn in a room, and I need to create objects to place down, because previously I was just creating a crate and then it would randomly turn into one of the other crates, and then it would know what it was based on the sprite. But what I want to do now is certain rooms should have certain types of crate in. So instead I'm going to kind of create do containers there, and we'll do a... I'm not going to code these now. I'm going to come back to it later, because I was putting off building the rooms because I knew I needed to rebuild the containers to place in the rooms to give them their identity. I thought, well, actually what I can do is create a bunch of placeholder objects with the right sprite on, but they don't really do anything yet. So we'll do object item container. Oh, I've already got that. Have I already started building that? Let's have a look. Yeah, there it is. Okay, so I did start doing this work, probably at 2 AM in the morning, and that's why I don't remember doing it. So, object item container. And I will give that a sprite that I don't actually use. And then we've got... So a container is a child of object item parent, which means it can be picked up and thrown, and it has all of like the standard behavior of a object you can pick up and throw. And then a utility crate will be a child of that. And eventually I'll make jars into children of that as well. Because at the moment, basically all of the different types of smashable containers that give you some sort of loot are just completely separate, and they don't have any inheritance or anything, and it's really messy, and I've been meaning to rebuild this for a while. So we've got a utility crate, we've got a butcher's crate, I'm calling it, rather than a meat crate, because that's potentially misleading. Oh, I've changed the wrong one. Classic. Okay, so that's a... I'll delete all of these events for now, because this is going to be recoded. At the moment, it's just a child of object item container. It doesn't do anything special. We'll have butcher, because all I care about now is making sure certain rooms can spawn certain types of thing. Doesn't matter if the thing doesn't actually work. So we've got a utility crate, which will have bombs and keys and stuff. We've got dairy crate, we've got butcher crate, and a grocer crate. And we might add other stuff later on, but the point for me is that it needs to be visually distinct, so you can kind of loosely understand what's going to be in it, you know? And I've just renamed them in the wrong order again. of course. I keep doing that. It's because I think I click when I should double click, and then yeah, they're all in the wrong order. Great. I do that so much. It's my biggest UX problem with Game Maker is I haven't double clicked into something properly and I've renamed the wrong thing or I've changed the wrong thing. I lose so much time with that problem. Okay. There's our crates and our utility crate. They don't do anything. They're all children of item container. And that means that when I actually make object item to container into something functional, I can set all of the different like sound effects and contents and stuff in that parent, and all these ones will exist to be placed in levels. Because object crate butcher, the only difference in that child object from object item container will be the starting sprite, and then the starting sprite will be the piece of information it uses to go, hey, what should be in here? Because the sprite is the only piece of information the player has to tell them that the contents of that should be different, or you know, the crate should be more difficult to break because it's a metal one or something. The sprite is the piece of information the player gets. So hooking all of the behavior onto that is makes a lot of sense, because it means that the game is working in the way that the player would expect it to work. Okay, so the other thing about this system and why we did this is I want to eventually basically be able to tell players this room definitely has this thing in it. So this room will be set up so that we know that at the start of the game, if you want a diner to serve food to, that's your priority, then this is the room you build, because all of the diners are like waiting in the little campsite, right? So we need this system that makes it possible to say without a doubt that that room will definitely spawn that type of thing. And then how that will work from a UI perspective eventually, which we're not here yet, but you know, you'll get your card for your room, see that certain things will be in certain rooms, and then communicate that through the cards before players build things or when players draft the cards. But then we can also have little bonuses as well. Like things that are occasionally in a place where they wouldn't be. You know, like a chest that's buried under the ground, or those kinds of things. There are certain interactions where things splat if they're thrown, yeah. But I need to be very careful with things like burgers and the more complex dishes, because if something takes you like 5 minutes to make because you've got to bounce all over the place to... All of the dishes in this game just require combining 2 items. So it's not too complex, because I didn't want to go into menus. I wanted everything to feel like a physical interaction of carrying things around and throwing them. So I didn't want to have like Stardew Valley crafting menus. It's just you put 2 things in a cauldron, something else comes out. But still, it's quite laborious to make things. So I want to be careful about not making them too squishy. You know, like if a bomb goes off next to your burger, obviously it should blow up. But if you just drop it slightly, then maybe not so much. So let's make a utilities layer, and here we'll do a couple of things that might be useful to the player, and will be like could do a fairy altar as an optional thing. These are one of the ways of getting relics in the game. You give them the food that they ask for on the symbol and it turns into a relic, and then you get a little fairy following you around. So having that as a optional spawn here might be nice. Just turn the optional blocks off so we don't have anything in a place where it shouldn't be. Maybe we do a little lamp. Optional cauldron. So the cauldron, you start off with one right near where you start, but if you find them later on, that can be quite helpful. So maybe what I should do... Oh, I've just deleted the whole layer. That's not what I wanted to do. I just want to delete that block. I want to move this. That guy over there, and then put the bonus cauldron in between them. Right, so what we're going to do now, maybe have a... Yeah. So that doesn't exist in the game data that like sets up the rooms and stuff. So if I go and find that, and we're going to put this in grey because it's the starting deck. I'm just going to turn off some of the others. I'm going to start turning off the ones that I haven't sort of refurbished. I'll do new room, and it's called the campsite. And that's the reference to which room it is. We're going to put 20 in the starting deck. And they have an offset value, which is a bit of a hacky way of just sort of working out this where the player should spawn in the room, but that will probably change eventually. And then some flavor text here, which is probably going to be removed from the game eventually because it doesn't really add anything to the game in its current format. So we will leave that out for the moment. And the campsite is a grey room, and there's 20 of it, and our starting deck should just be 20 campsites. Now, I'm going to take the... I'm going to take out everything that isn't a new thing, basically. So, I'll put 5 dairy farms in the deck. And... we can have 2 foyers and 2 libraries. And there's nothing else. And we've got the Kraken in the deck. I'll turn that to 0 as well. Let's see if that works. Let's see if the new room works. I want them to... It's difficult because you've got to think of like... Okay, I don't want the starting deck to be loads of different stuff. I want it to be a couple of duplicates of the same thing. Because otherwise it's too confusing to learn. But I want it to make thematic sense. So as we get more powerful and we're able to build like a slightly better zany space diner, we move away from these kind of post-apocalyptic ruin type things and into building fancier stuff. Okay, so there's a campsite. They're all sitting at their fancy tables outdoors at the campsite saying, I would like some roast meat. I would like a carrot. I would also like some roast meat. Okay, so you would like a carrot. There you go. Yeah, I changed their little kind of payout things so that they kind of gravitate towards you. The treasure that's lying around the level you have to run through, but when they pay you, it sort of flies to you. So we got 3 in that room. Let's just see how it feels. We're getting 3 in that room. Three in that room. That's interesting. Is that... Are we getting 2 in that room? Okay. And you'll always start off with 1 or 2 in the starting area. That's one with 1 room in. I guess I'm just trying to see what the perceived randomness is versus the actual randomness. Okay, 2 in that room. 3. So I've had 3 like half of the times. Most of the time I'm getting 3 of them. We only have 1 guaranteed out of the set that we put in the room, right? And then, if I like this room concept, then I can make some more bespoke graphical bits for it. I love to explode into coins. Yeah, we're occasionally getting just 1 in the campsite, but that's fine. That's kind of what I want to happen. You know, occasionally we should just get 1. Because all we're actually guaranteeing the player gets is 1. That's what they'll be shown on the card. You want a mushroom? Notice I've added a little bit of screen shake when you do a bigger jump as well. When you do a little jump, it doesn't do it. As soon as you fall from any sort of height, there's a bit more of a booming sound effect and a screen shake. Just makes Lem feel a bit weightier. There's also, when you whack walls, there's a lot more kind of... There's a bit of knockback, and there's that flash. Just everything feels a bit more physical than it did about a week ago, because I made a bunch of little tweaks to these sorts of things. I will eventually put a proper swing animation in for the spoon as well. At the moment, he just does goes into 1 random frame. Then he'll separate the spoon out from Lem, and he'll do a pose, and then there'll be like a 3-frame swing or something. You want a banana, Mr. Door? The Spore Door? Carnivore Spore Door? He does a little thumbs up when he's happy. Yeah, I read Swink ages ago when I was working at uni, and I haven't gone back to it. But yeah, I thought as a musician you'd probably appreciate the ADSL type stuff. So yeah, we've got lots of broken containers that don't properly drop things at the moment, but that's I'm going to refactor that all in one big go so that it's all consistent. There's always in this there's a kind of a question of when do you populate the container with the things that should be in it, because there are things like you know, relics that say that, oh, every jar will have an extra one of these in. It's like, well, do I want that to affect the jar as it spawns, or do I want it to retroactively affect previous jars? In which case, then we only decide what's in them at the point when they break. But then that could be really exploitable. You know, if you had there's a relic that's currently like, jars have a ruby in them for every red room you've opened, right? So if you know about that relic, you might deliberately not smash any jars until you've played loads of the level and spawned loads of rooms, and then go back and smash all the jars, which feels like it. I guess it's the sort of thing that if someone could be bothered to do it, maybe they should be able to pull it off, because that's kind of cool. Oh, look, we served the wizard, and he decided to give us a room drafting card. So this is what the cards will look like that let you pick a new room. Hey Alex, yeah, I don't know what's different about the game. I mean, it always ran okay on my machine, but also I've replaced the main character sprite. So I got like a proper animation template and squished it down to the right size, so it just feels much better to control. Like, I didn't change any of his movement code, but because I'd used a decent running animation, he now kind of feels like a real strong, fast, chunky boy. So these rooms look a little bit dismal because they are they're not doing the things a green room would normally do to like add grass and stuff. Mm. Complicating this. Don't need to do that. So moss blocks can spawn in any room that is not red. That's fine. If a soil block spawns in a red room, it will become a fungus soil block. Yep, that's fine. I don't know, Crackers. That's a software engineering question. I am not a software engineer. I mean, the way that you test that stuff is by playing it. And then you give people enough opportunity to find bugs before you start asking people for money, I guess. Playtime, 90 hours. That's only since we've had Steamworks set up and linked to the project, which is like the last 3 months out of 9 months of making this. I bet there are people that have released games where the playtime on their Steam link to their game at this point is like a third or a quarter of this. The thing is, I think unit tests for... I don't know if you can do unit tests in Game Maker because it's not the sort of thing I'd be interested in discovering. I think for finding bugs, great. I don't think for testing randomness it's a good idea because randomness in things like roguelikes is about the perception of reality rather than reality, you know? Players are like that with all sorts of randomness, but when it comes to like combinatorial randomness of like what's the chance of getting this thing and this thing in the same run and having a run where you're able to get that thing there and that thing there, it really comes down to people's perception rather than the real numbers. So you always want to be being way more generous than you think you need to be with those types of things, unless the goal, unless I would say, you know, if it's something that happens so frequently, you know, it's something that someone is going to do 1,000 times in the course of an hour, then you can use much kind of rarer probabilities for things. So we should occasionally see the blocks change to the mossy ones, even though it's in this grey starting room. So I just need to check why that's not happening. Like I said, we want the starting deck to feel almost like a bit of a little bit post-apocalyptic. Yeah, we're getting we're getting moss, but we're not getting grass. Do we have a room bounds in there? Yeah, we've got a room bounds. Check I'm actually using the blocks I think I'm using. Yeah, they're object solid soil. Is it because I've changed the name of this? Nope, that's still the same. Oh dear. Yeah, you have to publish drop rates in Europe, don't you? I don't know if that law's still in place. I imagine it would still be. I remember I was working on a mobile gacha game when the rules came in, and we had rotating gachas where it changed every week, and then we had to publish the rules, and it was like, could we just put the average chance of getting this character even though it changes every week? I don't know. They weren't super clear in the rules. Just going to check it's working in the dairy, which is our other green room. Yeah, so the green room is spawning the grass. You see the grass? This is the new cheese gizmo. So this is a kind of group of objects called gizmos. They are triggered by the bouncy button above them. We've got one that turns milk into cheese. Bounce on it a bunch of times, you get a cheese. There will be like a meat grinder, a juicer, a couple of different objects like that. Those guys are called udlings. I know I need to make them a little bit less ghast-like. People keep saying, it's a ghast. It's not, it's a cow. It's a cow that can fly. And when you boink it, it gives you some milk. Should have a room with some sort of like conveyor belt of jars on so you can boink one of these guys on top of it and... Cheese! Ah, look, the French orc wants some cheese. It's almost like I have a group of customers that are picked when cheese is chosen. So the fancy French orc with his little stripe, he's got a little beret on and a little stripy shirt. He's like, get me some cheese, s'il vous plaît. There you go, mate. Wow, 300 gold for just a simple cheese. That campsite was not spawning with characters in, but I know why that is. And it's because the spawning of the dairy broke something. So I know how to fix that, that's okay. But I don't know why our grass is not spawning. Because it works fine in the other room. We love a gizmo. Something is messed up here. That's the same as that. go. Spawning now. The diners are going away. But they are there. They're just in the wrong layer. If I go here and start whiling out. Yeah. I got a negative review because there was a diner hiding in the trees who I blew up. But that is because the dairy hasn't been fixed. So I'll go and fix the dairy now. Because this is one of the rooms I know will exist in the... or I intend for it to exist. But get rid of all of these random cheese blocks that I put in for testing. So the udderlings are going to just be in here chilling out. Get rid of all of these as well. The solid layer is all going to... we're going to go... add a layer called spawn amount 1 creatures. I'm going to spawn one of these. Where's my goat? Still got Gertrude the goat. I'm also going to make some nice kind of more rustic looking blocks that are like wood and brick and stuff so that we can have these kind of countryside settings or things like this. And I think we're going to put facade. So all of that will get spawned. I'll put some code in later to randomize the background a little bit, but at the moment it's fine. But we might have stuff like, you know, in the dairy, we could have a giant object floating in space and background, and occasionally there might be a cheese moon or something in the background. That would be fun. Okay, so all of that stuff will spawn. Everything on solid will spawn. We could experiment with having a different amount of doors each time, but the dairy is going to be like an upgraded room. So it's a green room. It's one that we have to draft. Having 2 doors makes sense because that's more generous to the player, and this is supposed to be like an aspirational thing that they want to find. So I'm just going to get rid of all of this. Well, actually, we'll make a clutter layer and take the flowers and stuff. So spawn amount 7 clutter. I'll just take the fireflies and the flowers and put them there. Make sure the flowers are in places that make sense. That one is hovering, so move that over. And the rest of these can get destroyed for now. And then renamed that. That was silly. Spawn amount 7 clutter. Go down to the bottom. And then spawn, that says spawn change, it should say spawn chance. Hey, cheese. We were just making cheese. Room bounds, that's gonna have 100. Okay, so out of the creatures, we've got 3 udderlings, 3 goats. It's gonna spawn, let's say it spawns 2. So we've got a good chance of getting 2 of the same or a mix. And the udderlings are actually easier to get milk out of at the moment, so I'm going to make the goats more common. And then we're going to have a spawn we're going to have a guaranteed dairy crate in this room as well. I'll get some weird mouse lag over here, and I don't know why. Just close some stuff down. Where's my grid gone? Put my grid back on the right grid. chance for the dairy crate to be an annoying place. That's fun. And this guy is always going to be there. Let's just see what happens if I put that over a block. So, spawn amount 1 gizmo. So I'll take the gizmo and we'll put a few of these down so they're not always in exactly the same place. I'm not going to spend too much time on doing that kind of thing at this level because this is more cosmetic. It's like that's functionally the same place, but we can see if it works. Right, so we'll get 1 of those 3 crates. We'll get 2 out of these 5 animals. And then we're going to do... spawn amount... spawn chance 10. Oh, actually... I think what I'm going to do instead, so the crates, we're gonna have a utility layer that has, I'm just going to put them up here and then worry about where they go later. So the way the goats work is you've got to feed them a couple of objects and then they will give you milk, but you have to go up to them with a bottle. So what we'll do, I'm going to make like an inventory of things that could spawn in this room, right? So we've got a chance to get a milk. We've got a chance to get a bottle. We've got a chance to get stuff to feed the goats with. And then there'll be this big pool of stuff that can spawn in different places. And it could be a dairy crate. It could be just something to feed the goat with. And then out of that set, it will spawn like 3 of the possible things or something like that. I think that could work quite well. So let's have 3 empty bottles. 3 empty bottles, 1 bottle that already has milk in, 4 food items. So let's put a fruit. So we'll eat fruit as well. Something like that distribution, plus the 3 crates. And then if you crack the crates open, you've still got a chance of getting a pre-filled bottle of milk or even a piece of cheese that you then have to do the rest of the level. Or the rest of the room. So that feels pretty good to me. Just change the grid to 24 so I can see where these are supposed to go. Not like that. And then just distribute these to roughly where it makes sense for them to be. Maybe the carrots are all down there in the field. The fruit is up high. Some fruit will spawn randomly because of trees, but I might change that and make this all a little bit more predetermined. And then maybe I put a little shelf up here for some of these pre-made items to spawn on. And then that will have the benefit as well of, like, I don't know, maybe we might not want the goat to stumble across something it can eat when it's like slightly higher value. So let's put the empty bottles up here. And maybe if we get that milk bottle, it's got its own little place as well. Maybe put that there. And maybe we want... Yeah, I mean, that feels like there's enough variation on the theme there for that to be fun to play with in different contexts. So what I'll do now is I'll test it, but we'll spawn several of them and see the different variations that come out. So this list has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 objects in it. I'm going to let it spawn 3 of those things each time. So there's a not zero chance that it might only spawn carrots, but that will be relatively rare. Yeah, there is a version of the carrots where they can spawn down in the ground as well. I just haven't set that up for this new system yet, but I'll make the carrots so they do that. We're going to have another room that's just a farm. There's just loads and loads of carrots. Okay. Let's go. Dairy farm. We build the dairy farm. What have we got? We've got 1 udling and 1 goat. Okay, so in this case, I've got the milk. So maybe that's what I need. I'll go see what these guys want. We've got someone who wants an omelette. We've got someone who wants some juice. We've got a chest that wants a key. Someone that wants an ice cream. I think the ice cream is actually items in that room. I'm going to make a gizmo for making ice cream, because at the moment you make ice cream in a cauldron, and you know, I'm down for a little bit of things being illogical, but I think people would find it more satisfying to have ice cream have its own kind of crafting method, if that makes sense. So we'll do milk. I'm gonna cheat. Oh yeah, the chest will look a bit mimicky, a bit more mimicky eventually, but I'm not sure why that destroyed the block beneath it. I haven't worked out what's going on there. The little alien guy wants some ice cream. Goat! Oh, I know what's happening. I think I started prototyping some stuff to, like, make it so that objects could damage bricks when they bash into them, and that's why some stuff is, like, destroying other bricks. I've got to poop! Campsite? Who's at the campsite? I love how it just looks like Dark Souls now. He wants that. That's mushroom and meat, I think. I'm gonna make the goat, when it's dead, just turn into a piece of meat, because the dead goat sprite is a little bit morbid, and I think I prefer the cartooniness of things die and just immediately turn into a big piece of raw meat. It's kind of a bit clearer how it works as well. Ah, Le Orc wants his cheese again. He wants a barrel of toxic waste. We need a specific place to get toxic waste barrels from as well. Okay, so remember, the crates aren't set up to actually deposit their things yet, so there was a chance then that we could have got a pre-made piece of cheese out of the dairy crate. And in this case, I would have to bring a bottle from elsewhere, put it under him, get the milk, pop it back up here, put it in there. I think maybe the dairy farm can be a bit more generous in how much stuff it spawns out of that list. I think, bearing in mind you're only going to have one of these in your deck, right? I need to make the door do a drinking effect when it has bottles instead of eating them. There's a fun thing with these mushrooms now that they can turn into little myconids that explode. But they have like a little timer on them, and if you pick them up and start carrying them, they never turn into them. So you sort of like learn that you need to quickly grab them before they turn into things. Will there be cats? Maybe. There might be a diner that's a cat. I'm trying to avoid having like lots of different creatures that don't have a very clear thing they do. You know? We're not making a simulation of like every creature that would live in a world. They need to be... what I'm trying to do is like a mix of characters where you kind of know what they would do, and other stuff that's a bit weirder and you need to like work it out and learn it. Anyone want some poop? I was talking with Gleb about having a very simple system where diners could be like charmed or disgusted, and they get a buff or a debuff to like how much they tip you or how much they don't tip you. And then you could have stuff like, oh, there's a poo near this character. Now they're disgusted. Now they're gonna like only give me 50% of the value for their meal or something. And then that would create some fun little positioning puzzles where you can like squirt perfume at people or put scented candles next to them or something to do the opposite effect. He wants sushi. He wants a star fruit. So at the moment I've got the game set up so it randomly sets the amount of stars you've got each time I playtest, so that it puts me at the beginning or end of the game in terms of the difficulty. You want a ravioli? Well, good job I've got console cheats. The ravioli is one of the hardest things to make in the game because you need to spawn the kraken and blow it up to get its sweet, sweet tentacles. Some of these should be covered in moss as well. I'm gonna just change the Hey, Zico. Yep, the poop handling. Fun times. That's the great thing about food as a theme in games is you can play around with disgust, and you can turn some of that into mechanics, but some of it's just funny if you leave it in the player's mind, you know? Like, lots of funny moments in Overcooked from sort of you know, putting food on the floor to pass it to another player. And the game isn't like, hey, you put that on the floor, minus points. And that's kind of very funny. So, for this to feel thematic, I think it does need its own blocks, and it needs to be like some sort of like countryside house type thing. Because these green rooms, like the dairy farm, that's supposed to be like a kind of deluxe room that you would draft. So I need a way of making this bit look nice. And I think creating a set of tiles that look sort of like a, I guess kind of like a Tudor house, not medieval. What is the name of that central little gatehouse town in Rogue Legacy 2? Where there's like a town in the middle of it. I guess this kind of thing. So maybe I have a roof tile block like this, and then some wooden walls. And I think that would make the farm and stuff look a bit nicer. Because the kind of progression in terms of the visual identity of the different rooms is you start off with the kind of ruined post-apocalyptic looking stuff, and then the things you build after that should be much nicer and kind of more aspirational, I guess. Oh no! Why did that happen that time and not before? Because I was walking away from the door. Haven't seen that happen there before. That's alright. It's not time for dealing with that type of bug. It is time for making rooms. Okay, so the dairy works, and then I think what I would do is I will make some... What's the name? It's not a... I could just call it house, I guess. So I have a different set of blocks for doing that, which will come later. Yeah, I think maybe Bloodborne is a good reference, actually. Let's have a look. Yeah, Yarnum. Is it Tudor buildings, though? I mean, it's kind of Victorian setting. Yeah, it's Gothic. Now, I'm thinking of stuff like this because this feels a little bit more country and rustic and kind of fairy tale quaint, you know? And I think the juice in this game, and I don't mean juice in terms of game, I mean like the secret sauce, is about having these weird juxtapositions of like a dark, spooky, fungal world and some ruined post-apocalyptic stuff. And then the fairy tale stuff should feel fairy tale, you know, rather than anything too kind of high fantasy, I guess. I'm thinking like Grimm's fairy tales type stuff for when we have a little farm or a dairy or something like that. Okay, so our dairy works. We're gonna have... should have one that's just a big old farm that just has loads and loads of carrots. How do you distinguish between like a farm that grows vegetables versus a livestock? Is there like a different name for it? A farm that grows vegetables in the States is specifically known as a market garden. Okay, maybe that's a good... maybe we'll call it that. Potager, a smaller residential plot. Allotment? Potager is a nice name. Let's call it that. I want the one where you come in halfway down from there. Where's one like that? I don't want to have to like go through every... That's the template that I want, the drawbridge. I'll just call it Veg Farm internally, and then I'll work out the proper name for it later on. It's probably the best thing to do. Okay, so here we're going to get rid of all of these solids. I feel like it should be quite wide, so that it forces you to build your level a bit wider. Because just a bunch of random vegetables in the ground isn't going to be that inherently interesting. So let's get rid of these. Room bound. We need a room bounds. And then I want to make it like double the width of this. Maybe. Get rid of all of these as well. Put the room bounds into there. And, okay, so how big is this room? it is... No, not that. I want the actual room data. Okay, it's 600 wide. So we want to add on that width again, minus 48. Because I'm just trying to add the space from here to here, and then take off these distances. So I have to do math every time we do a different shaped room, because it's like we're trying to keep everything on a loose grid. So so that plus the original 600 will be 1000. This is like the longest room I've made, but it's still time for experimenting with this stuff, because we're working out the workflow for making new rooms now that we've worked out more of what the game is. Courtyard, that's great. Yeah, I'm sort of torn between giving them really flavorful names and just making sure people immediately understand what it is, you know? These are some great words, though. Could be really annoying and have us spawn one of these 3 doors thing, and one of them is up the top. So if I were to add a new door, there's a gap of 5 tiles between them. 1, 2. Yeah, so we would do and get rid of those 2. And I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it just to see if it works. So spawn mount 1 door. So we'll take those 3, put them in that layer, break everything because the grid changes every time I make a new layer, because this engine hates me. I just don't know how we make this interesting, because it's a big open space, right? But maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe it's just about the functionality. The right type of soil there, yeah. I just remembered we're supposed to be coming in from up here, aren't we? So we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's our actual entry point. And the reason I did this, I've already forgotten what I was doing. Okay, so we want to spawn one of those 2 doors. The reason I made it like this was because I wanted there to be a lot of soil that spawns, so that we can have like treasure under the ground as part of the farm. I thought that would be neat. So we can have like a relic, but you really have to like bomb the ground away to get to it, you know? Just check these are aligned properly before I copy loads of them. Yeah, I'm going to have to do a lot of cosmetic work to make these green upgraded rooms feel better than the grey rooms. And I think just making sure they have better stuff in isn't going to be enough. They need to feel like something that there's something you've earned by grinding the game a bunch. They need to feel really cool. So this end we could have the farmhouse. I would just put it with stone stuff at the moment. But if I make that kind of Tudor looking stuff I was talking about earlier, we can have like a farmhouse at the end, and then it has the doors in it for the next bit, right? And then we would have like, I don't know, something like that, sloping roof type thing, trying not to get too granular with how the blocks kind of convert to real concepts of, oh, this is a roof of something, because it gets too fiddly. And it's the whole point of a tile-based system is it's supposed to be reasonably abstract, so you've got some flexibility. But if I do have that house system, I can use multiple places. I think having a little house on the end is going to feel quite cute, because we go along here, we build our next nice fancy building, and it's going to feel like that's the entrance to that, you know, which is kind of what we want to do with this. Okay, have some spawn. Oh, spawn amount veggies. Well, that should be camel case like that. Okay, and then now there's nothing to say that I'm not gonna like come back to some of these later on and have more variety of ingredients. At the moment I've been keeping it very, very slim in terms of like not adding a bunch of different types of new thing. But for now, all carrots. And then I think what I'll do that's a good question, Alex. One of the ways that I'm handling it in my game is by not letting them have access to it all early on. So, for example, when the diners show up, they use your progress level into the game, how many stars have you earned, to determine how complex the thing they ask for. And that means that when they first show up, they're just going to be like, I want a carrot. And then later on, they might be like, I want a vegetable soup, which is a carrot and a spinach. And that's the point at which you then have to like light a cauldron, put a carrot and a spinach in the cauldron to make the thing. But by that point, you've been playing the game for like 20 minutes or so. So I think you can leave things up to experimentation, but I think you need to make sure that players are motivated enough to continue playing the game before you start making that an expectation of them, you know. Actually, we'll do some spinach here. So we'll do like something like that, and then I'll put some grocers boxes in here as well, so you've got like a chance to get more than one vegetable in one go. And then this, you know, this is overly generous, but that's what the room is for. The room is for spawning all that stuff. So maybe I've made it too long, but we could put some little jumpy ruin bits in here as well. And then we'll say, okay, well, there's how many things on this list? Let's spawn 10 of those things. And yeah, I think when you have a quest system already, think of the way that you can use the quest system to like gradually introduce things in a way that is basically a soft tutorial but doesn't present itself that way. I think that's a good way of doing that sort of thing. It's been so long since I added any trees to the game, I can't remember how they work. Okay, spawn chance 25 tree. I'm a little bit worried that some of these rooms just don't feel very platformery, because it's just like, you know, a left to right side scrolling location like a game like Kingdom or something like that. But I'm hoping it will all kind of balance out when you're sort of contrasting this with other types of place in the game. So I'm just going to make some of these optional as well. So spawn, chance, 10 soil, and we'll just take a bunch of random ones from the bottom and make them optional. I also quite like the idea if we have, I guess the concept of this room is it's quite generous in terms of what you get out of it, but if you put it into your level, you're going to have to keep walking over this quite long space to go backwards and forwards. So there's like a trade-off there, I guess. We'll go back into the solid layer and I'll just get rid of a few more bits so that it's got a nice wobbly bottom. And then the other thing that will happen, because this is a green room, some of this will have a chance to turn into gold ore as well. So that's already a part of the game. Is that part of the identity of green rooms is that, you know, I guess the way to look at it is that blue rooms are utility rooms. They give you tools like drafting new rooms, getting bombs and keys and stuff like that. Green rooms are more like direct economy rooms where you get an object to cook with or you get gold. And then I think what we'll do, we'll take some spaces out here. And then these will be where our chest could be. And it's a case of, do we always have a chest? Or do we say, okay, each of these chests has a chance. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Let's do 10. And then we'll say spawn, chance, 10, chest. Okay, so each of these has its own independent 10% chance of spawning. So you could end up with a really lucky farm with more than one relic chest under the ground, and then you have to go and find some bombs and you have to blow it up. 1, 2, 3, 4. I love this new system. So good. This like spawn setting the logic for how the room builds based on what is in the name of the layer. I went to Gleb last week and I said, hey, I think this is how I want to design the rooms. I want to like be able to say, you know, this thing spawns this amount of times. This thing definitely spawns, or like on this layer, one of these 3 things definitely spawns, or 2 out of 5 of these things definitely spawn. And he just kind of, he spent like less than a day on it, and then it was retooled to work that way. So cool. Let's put this one down here. Kind of want to cluster them at the end so you get the experience of like, once you know this room and you know there's usually a chest in it, you like come in and you're looking for your chest, and the further along you walk, the more likely you are to see one, but it takes a long time. Probably we want to be able to, on the room card, to say this room definitely has X in it. So we'll make sure that there's always a full grocer crate, maybe all the way over here. And let's leave it at that for now. Yeah, the wood crate is the utility crate that has like bombs and stuff in it. I have furniture clutter. Like these little barrels and stuff. So it's kind of just to test that out. Just to try what Cheese is suggesting. These don't block you. But I mean, we can do that for flavor, just so it looks a bit more like a farm, I guess. So, I'll put them on the solid layer so they always spawn. We've got a little barrel. Might turn into a little table with a candle on it in some cases, which would be funny. Okay, let's set that up in the data now. So our it was the drawbridge I built this from, wasn't it? So we want to take that offset, and this is a green room called Vegetable Farm. Yeah, I mean, there isn't really much value to having that many of the same vegetable in this game. Like, having 10 carrots spawn is not that helpful. But that's the sort of thing where I'd rather put the abundance in and then work out something fun to do with it later. You know, like, maybe there is like a... Like, you sort of create the abundance in the game and then create a counter to it. So maybe there's like a big bunny somewhere, and it needs you to feed it like 10 carrots, and then it's like, okay, hope I get more carrots than usual in the vegetable farm because the bunny has spawned, you know, that kind of thing. Sort of just constantly countering myself. I might have to log off in a second. I've got to mute someone. I'm gonna wrap this up in 5 because I need to meet some people. The time flew by. That's what happens when you are in the flow. Okay, so here's our little post-apocalyptic campsite, early game utility crate. We've lucked out and we've got a safe. It's just, there's our vegetable farm. So many vegetables. This time it spawned that up there. Spawn another one. What does my level look like? That's what my level looks like. Maybe we could have a scarecrow character or something. That would be fun. I feel like having a scarecrow would give it a bit more identity. I don't know what the scarecrow would do, though. I probably need to make sure these aren't too far to the bottom. Or that will happen. But maybe that's a good reason to build your farm above something, so that if you lose your relics in the floor... Now I'm imagining a system of crows that swoop down and eat vegetables. Remember earlier I was saying about how I wanted to have... I wanted to make a lot of creatures in this that don't actually directly attack you and take your health. They're always like menacing your restaurant business rather than you directly. Right? Yeah, exactly what you just said, Connor. Having little crows or weird little creatures that come down and eat things if they're left out exposed for a long period of time, that would be a good reason to have the scarecrow. And then you could also pick the scarecrow up and like carry him around to places. It just like ambiently deters those things. That's quite a easy set of interactions to make. So what I think the path I would go down there is make the scarecrow as an object, make it look cool, have 2 of them spawn in the farm, work out the functionality for it later. But yeah, like little birds that come and eat your food off the thing, that could be a general problem. And when you spawn the veg garden, it's like, okay, now I have all of this veg, but I also get some scarecrows, and that means that this is way more powerful than the stuff I got earlier in the game, because earlier in the game stuff keeps eating my things, you know. I mean, the goat already would eat your crop. If a goat could randomly spawn in here, then it would go along eating your crops. So you would have to either pick up the goat and take it somewhere else or kill it. So yeah. Okay, so you sort of... I need to stop the stream in a second because I've got to meet some people. But I really like that because you can have this really big abundant room spawn and go, oh cool, I've got all this stuff. But then you immediately get a little problem to deal with, whether it's the birds or the goat or just something that's going to eat your stuff. And some of that problem might be dealt with automatically, like, oh, there's a scarecrow, but, you know, maybe you need to pick the scarecrow up and move it around because it only has a certain range or whatever. Yeah, kind of cats to deal with rats, that kind of stuff. I just don't want to push it into that space where there are so many, like, standard animals that you would get in a Minecraft or whatever, rather than them being weird versions of things, you know? I already agonized quite a bit over the goat, and then I was like, okay, but goat, Billy Goat's Gruff, Grimm's Fairy Tales, you know? I want to kind of have a mix of stuff that feels a bit alien and weird and made up especially for the game, and then stuff that's a bit more intuitive. Okay, I'm going to feed this door, and then we're wrapping up for the day. But thank you for joining me while I got restarted on my remodeling my room. See, you can see how it's kind of not super cool to just have loads of horizontal rooms in the game. We probably need a mine shaft that goes like straight down. Because I do have a mine, but I think having the mine as like a straight down room would make a lot more sense. Right, thanks for joining, folks. I will see you all soon. Thanks for checking this out, giving me some ideas.